Ah, hey, Alex, how are you?
Good, how are you?
I'm doing all right. It's nice being back at the shop, I have to say. It's
Yeah,
been like 6 weeks, but it's nice to be here. I miss the frames, you know?
yeah, yeah.
How have you been doing? How's it working from home? Do you like it?
It's yeah. I've never really worked from home before in any capacity, and I I find I find like I'm getting into a groove at different times of the day in
Yeah,
ways that I hadn't before, where I would come in before and it was kind of sensory overload at the shop, where I have a lot of different people that have a lot of different questions and
yeah,
are all working on really interesting projects, and I want to sort of get involved and see what's going on and all of those things,
yeah,
and the projects that I really wanted to be working on longer term
right,
ended up getting put on the back burner because I just didn't have the time to devote to
right,
those sort of longer term projects. So
right.
I think this period of time has been interesting to sort of reprioritize the projects that we
Yeah,
really as a shop wanted to invest the time working on.
yeah. What
So
are there things that you prefer about working at home? How is it working at home with a partner, like with Jane there? Like you guys, does it
it,
ever? Because I know
yeah,
that can be kind of tricky. Me and my
it works
husband,
pretty well. I mean, she has a different room where we have a door between us, and
that
I don't
helps.
see her more than 3 or 4 times over the course of the working day, and
Okay.
so it's and I get to look outside, and
You have your cat.
so I have a cat that is mostly sleeping during the day, but it's yeah I have gotten more accustomed to it more
Yeah.
quickly than I thought
Yeah.
I would. So,
What do you miss about being at the shop?
uh, I miss getting my hands into like specific projects and to see the the physical product, because the physical product is really the biggest sort of hole in all of our lives right now. I think
Yeah.
that we can't be, as much as we want to do tinkering and research and the different projects that we're all working on, we're limited by what we sort of have available to us. So
Right.
not to be able to sort of see what the frames look like, and
Right.
see what the shop smells like. I mean, that's another funny one where the wood is such a consistent thing that you're used to smelling, and when I've gone down at the basement and done a small woodworking project or something, I remember what the wood smells like more so than anything else, and it's more pungent a little bit, because you sort of you don't have you're not as
As you
desensitized.
do. Yeah. Yeah. And it's also nice just getting your hands dirty again, like literally with
Yeah,
sawdust, ink,
yeah,
whatever.
definitely. Yep.
Yeah.
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 Uh,
Um, During this whole time, has there been any kind of obstacles, or what sort of obstacles have you come up with? And was the CARES, the stimulus package, hard to wade through? What was that process like?
well, so certainly that was very difficult to. I mean, really, the difficulty was that the regulations and the guidance on the various different programs kept changing. So even though there's a law that's put into place, that law doesn't mean that it's going to be enacted letter for letter. It's that law gets translated by different services and different departments within the government,
Mhm.
and they get filtered down through a bunch of different levels to get to the point where they're actually handing you money. So
Right.
originally, we made certain assumptions about what how it was going to work, that some of which were turned out to be accurate and some of which did not. So it was really the following the the turnover in the changes in the law that was the most frustrating. And I mean, I had Chris doing most of it because I didn't really want to get emotionally tied up in the sort of swings of, you know, one day you think that it's going to do X, and then
Right.
2 days later you think it comes out that it's doing something completely different.
Right.
And for
Right.
me, until I got, you know, until we got the funding come through, it didn't really matter.
Right.
All that matters is sort of what happens at the end.
Right.
And we can't really control what, you know, we could make plans and sort of do the best we could to be prepared for the different sort of scenarios that could happen. But ultimately, it just wasn't worth my time to
Right.
be focusing on that. And Chris did a fantastic job of
He really did.
negotiating with not literally, but sort of negotiating with all of the different literature that was out there, and not get sucked into, you know, one person saying one thing and being convinced that that's the way it's going to be. So I think that was certainly frustrating for the first, you know, 3 or 4 weeks.
It was scary. It was really scary.
Yeah, I mean, everything that was written in the law, you know, my feeling was if the law is followed, and, you know, if the banks do what they are instructed to do, that it wasn't going to be a problem. And so the way I had to look at it for that period of time where we didn't really know what was going to happen was that just depend on the fact that, hey, you know, this is the way the law is written, and this is the various, you know, applications we've filled out, and we've done everything that we could possibly have done, and it's really kind of out of our hands at that point. And if you know 4 weeks went by, or another 6 weeks went by, and it wasn't coming through, we were going to have to make some other decisions. But I was pretty comfortable with the position that we were in.
And it's been amazing that we've all been able to keep working and keep getting paid. And it's where I know I'm one of the lucky ones, and I'm extremely thankful for that.
Yeah, I mean, the shop does not exist without its employees. So, you know, it's, you know, I'm a big believer in, you know, making sure that everybody, you know, is treated as fairly as possible and as equitably as possible, and that, you know, the success that we've all built together is distributed to, you know, to everybody. And I'm also, you know, really excited with how everybody has sort of taken on projects and sort of run with them and learn and sort of grown over the last, you know, month to month and a half, where, you know, we could have just totally shut down and just went and, you know, watched Netflix and you know, went on long walks all day. But yeah, I think everybody having sort of something to check in with every day has been a sort of a consistency that's really nice to follow through this period of time.
Because I know you've been doing a lot of improvements for J&T for production and the computer program that we use. But are there personal projects that you've been working on, like fun things that you've been doing at home, or not fun things that had to get done?
Well, I'm trying to build up somewhat of a shop in at my house. I've never really sort of had the motivation to have a bunch of woodworking machinery at home, because I spend all day sort of working and thinking about wood. And, but being away from that has gotten me more motivated to start doing that again. So I built a birdhouse earlier this week. We're going to try to put that up and see if we can get any birds. And I've been trying to replace this molding, trim molding below a window And
Yep.
so I had to match this molding profile that was specific to the that would have matched the other ones.
Yeah.
And so that was interesting to.
Yeah. That's like what I think this time has been really good for, is just doing things that you've kind of always wanted to do or just never had the time for. Like when you get home, you're tired, you don't want to do anything, but then now we have so much time. So it's nice to do those projects. I have a question though. Like, I know you've been framing for a long time. You've owned your own business and also J&T for a while, but how did you learn to frame? Where did you learn the art of framing in the beginning?
Well, so in art school, I did a very small amount of framing, and I was, and throughout the different jobs that I had before starting the business, I was encountering framed pieces or fine art, working at galleries and museums. You were around it, and you were aware of
Right.
dealing with these other companies, these other frame shops, and they, had varying levels of quality. I had a friend in Maine that I had worked with when I was a student at Bates College, and I went up to him after a couple of years of working in museums and galleries, and I said, I had this crazy idea. I want to start a frame shop just kind of for fun and see where it went, because I knew a lot of artists and everybody was always looking for frames, and I didn't see the kind of frame shop that he ran in Maine in Boston. So my goal was just to sort of to do something like what he was doing in Maine, in Boston. And so he sort of walked me around his shop, and he showed me what machinery I might want to purchase just to get started, and he gave me the name of a couple of suppliers that I could use, and that really got me off the ground. So I went out and bought some machinery from some shops that were basically just liquidating their small, very small shops, and then just spent a year or two in my parents' basement, just teaching myself every little.
That's kind of amazing that you did that. Yeah.
Until it got to the point after a year and a half or 2 years that I needed more space. I was running out of space. I had enough orders to sort of stay pretty consistent, and that's when I moved to South Boston. And then it really became a business. I mean, before it was kind of a hobby that my friends knew about, and that I would work, I would work for mostly people that I knew, or people who were sort of one step removed from people I knew. But I wasn't really getting approached by people out of the blue as much.
Right. Do you remember like what your first big, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Sorry, what were you saying? What was like your first big kind of account or big customer that you're like, yeah, all right, I'm here. I can do this. Do you remember?
I mean, the galleries on Harrison Ave, 8 or 9 years ago when I was first starting, were incredibly supportive. So I had worked alongside of them when I worked at a gallery in Boston, and they trusted me enough just through sort of a friendly relationship to give me work through that. So I did a couple of bigger jobs for them towards the end of the time where I started thinking that this could be a real thing that I wanted to pursue. And then that gave me the confidence to say, like, yeah, I definitely want to rent a real production space. And go into it a little bit, more in depth.
Do you have a favorite thing to frame, like a favorite medium or a favorite medium? What's your favorite thing to frame? Also your least favorite.
Well, the least favorite is easy. It's pastels, which are everybody's least favorite things.
Yeah. I was gonna say yours, but yeah, pastels.
I think small, lightweight works on paper that are island matted is just perfect. I mean, you get a nice, wide island mat around a really small, thin work on paper, and you can feel the little bits of creases in them, and it feels so much like an object, but also it's this, little like sketch or drawing or prep,
Yep.
some like little piece of ephemera. I think those are
Yeah.
all really cool.
Yeah, that's so satisfying. Yeah. What's your favorite frame? One that you make, or that we make? You know what I meant.
Let's see. I'm gonna look around and see what we have. I really like the swan profile.
It's very traditional. It's really nice.
It's traditional, but it also, I think it can look cool. It can look contemporary at the same time. Yeah, there you go. Yep.
Yeah.
So
This
I
is
actually
maple with new graphite.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
And it's really flexible too. I think it can look, different with different finishes, and it has, a really nice balanced shape to it.
Yeah.
I actually converted the profile into a round frame. Like right after we got the CNC router.
Yep.
So I don't know if you ever saw this, but
I don't think I did.
Just looking at this reminded me of it. But this is a round frame.
That's beautiful. I've never seen that.
Profile. Yeah.
That's perfect as the round frame. That's perfect.
Yeah.
So, and I know that Tom has been working on, and Annalise working on different finishes and things like that. Is there something that like you're super excited to try out when you get back to work?
Tom's been playing around with different types of buffing, and I think the being able to do a high gloss sort of like piano lacquer finish is something we've never really tried to do, and I think if we can get to the point where we're doing that consistently, that would be a really good addition to our repertoire of finishes, and it would be a completely different look than the majority of the frames that we're doing right now.
Yeah. Yep.
I think, and if we can convert that into, doing that same high gloss finish on other finishes other than just white, if we can do a black that looks like that, if we can do some of the stains with a really high gloss polished face, I think that would be really cool, and it would be different than a lot of the finishes that I see.
What are you looking forward to the most? Like either going back to the wood shop, because also we opened the new location for Jameson and Thompson, a month before we had to close, 6 weeks before we had to close. Like so we haven't even unpacked everything yet. There's still stuff.
Right.
So
I think that's it. I think it really just breaking in and living in the space in JP, the new space in JP. More, I think that's going to be really fun. I think that space allows us to do so many more interesting things that we weren't really able to do that really involve, bringing in the community into the different things that we work on. So I think your idea of starting to do a life drawing class,
I can't wait.
A couple times a month is great, and that's something that will, introduce us to a number of artists throughout the city, but also, give them something that is somewhat unique within Boston. There are only a couple of places that are doing them, and finding other ways that we can, engage with the community, whether they're, clients or not.
Last question. So if you had unlimited resources, price was not an obstacle, whose artwork would you want to own?
Let's see. That's a good question. I would say either a Thomas Struth photograph or a Candida Hoffer photograph from the mid to late 90s.
Why those two?
I just always, I mean, when I, was studying photography, that was where I was always from.
Mhm.
I think in my mind sort of, really appreciates just the quality of the photographs from that time period, and
Mhm.
it just all like makes sense to me in a really
Yeah,
sort of pleasing way. It's something that you would want to wake up to, and just it's just like they're like perfect photographs.
it makes you happy every time you look at it.
Right, right.
Yeah, which is, yeah. You would get a nice frame on it too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you would. Massive, big, wooden frame. That's how they were always presented.
Yeah. Cool. Well, thanks for this, Alex. It was really great talking to you. It was good to see
Yeah.
you because I haven't actually seen you in a while. So
Yeah.
this is great. And thank you for everything. It's been a weird 6 weeks, but we've held it together, and that, I think,
Yeah.
that's something.
That's really, that's the only thing you can really ask for, is that everybody sort of, has been engaged and has been learning things and has been sort of trying new
Yeah.
new things and new ways of thinking, and that's great. That's
Yeah.
what I want to see.
And yeah, and it's nice. I think that there's this among all of us. We all have each other's back. We will support each other, do whatever, and that is kind of, I think that's priceless.